all getting situated here. Thank you so much for, I see Ron and Ken that is joining us. We are going to get started and we're going to start with the mayor, Mayor Rosenberg, doing an announcement, and then we'll come back to me. And at the end, we'll close out with William Harris from the Policing Task Force. So we'll start with the mayor first. Go ahead.
Perfect. I'm unmuted, so we're ready to go. Good afternoon. My name is Katie Rosenberg, and I am the Mayor of Wausau. So I just want to thank you for taking time to participate in this listening session. We're holding half a dozen of these sessions to understand how our community has interacted with law enforcement in the past and what those expectations are moving forward. In addition to these listening sessions, we've also set up dedicated phone lines in English, Spanish, and Hmong, where folks can anonymously share their experiences. We also have an online form, and of course, there's snail mail. And you can get all of those details at the WIP's website. It's wipps.org/WPD. Now, your comments that you're sharing with us will be shared with the entire Wausau Policing Task Force, which was created by my office and authorized by the City Council after Wausau had the largest political demonstration in generations this last summer. Nearly 2,000 people showed up to peacefully demonstrate and affirm that Black Lives Matter, and we heard you, and we wanted to be responsive, but not reactive. So for the last several months, the task force has been meeting to learn about and assess Wausau's policing policies and practices, and they are so ready to hear from you about your experiences, whether that's good or bad, or maybe just kind of neutral. And they're going to use these insights to provide community-led public safety recommendations to the public, to the Wausau City Council, and to the Wausau Police Department about how to best protect the human health, safety, and general welfare of Wausau residents and visitors who come into contact with law enforcement. We do have a member of the task force present this afternoon. I just want to give a nod to County Board Supervisor, Police and Fire Commission member, and all around good guy, William Harris, for attending this afternoon. Others will have access to your comments afterwards. So please know that this is a safe space for you to share whatever comments you need to and want to, and there won't be any retaliation for sharing your thoughts and experiences. So thank you for engaging with your community as we strive for excellence together.
So thank you so much, Mayor Rosenberg, and welcome everyone. My name is Yang Lor, and I will be facilitating tonight's conversation. This is a public meeting and we're recording it so that we can accurately capture what is being said. If you do not feel comfortable with others hearing what you have to say, or if you would like to protect your identity, or if you have additional things you want to say anonymously, please know that we want to hear your voice and that there are other ways to participate. As Mayor Rosenberg mentioned, you can share a voice message, an email, a letter, or video, or an audio, or fill out an online form. The online form is the most confidential way to share information and will not be linked to your identity. For more information, again, please visit wips.org/WPD. It's also provided in the chat. If you have any technical issues, we have tech people on standby to assist, which is the WIP staff. You'll see WIP staff L, WIP staff K. They are here to help us with any technical difficulties. For Zoom etiquette, we really ask that you try to, you can choose to keep your camera on or off, but we ask you to keep your microphone on mute at all times until the moderator, me, calls on you if you like. We have such a small group, so I'm going to be very honest. I'm going to really just open it up to the rest of you to just let's have a conversation. If we had a larger group, I might monitor and moderate it more, but because we have such a smaller group, we'll just have some informal conversations. So we'll kind of go with that. So ground rules. Please avoid background distractions and stay on mute. Only one person to speak at a time. And again, really allowing each other to say our stories and what we have to share and making sure that each person can thoroughly complete their thoughts and feelings first. Some of the things that we're going to share tonight might be very sensitive. So as a participant here, please try to keep an open mind or allow that person that it's okay to have emotions. It's okay to have those emotions here. We will not, however, tolerate any hate speech. So be constructive with your feedback. Say how you feel, provide examples and things. We all want to hear about that. Good things and bad things, both. Whatever you have to share, we want to hear it. We just don't want it to be direct attacks or hateful messages towards certain things. Let's see here, making sure I have all the ground rules. So if you were to engage in certain hate speech that may not be appropriate, one of our staff will kindly take you out of the meeting. And again, we still want to hear from you. So there's other methods for you to share your feedback to us. We just want to keep this space where we're at virtually a safe place for everyone. Okay. So by staying in this space, you are acknowledging and accepting these ground rules. If you choose not to abide by these rules, we invite you to leave the space so others can participate safely. If you choose to leave, again, go to whips.org/WPD. You can share your comments in multiple different ways. Or if you want to protect your identity, because again, it's being recorded. So we can just take out the essence of things. We do have another participant on here that is taking notes. Ruth is also on here. She will be off camera, but will be taking notes for us. So I'm going to get started. Does anybody have any questions first off about the ground rules, anything like that? Awesome. I see one person with a nod. The rest is silent. So I'm going to assume good. You know, unfortunately, there is no emojis. Sometimes there's emojis in this where you can put a thumbs up and let me know. Anyways, so I'm going to read all 6 questions and you can unmute yourself. And because again, we have such a small group, feel free to unmute yourself and just start to answer the questions in whatever order you feel is, comes to your heart. Okay. So the first question is, when you think of safety in the city of Wausau, what are the most urgent priorities in your opinion and why? Second question, what are current strengths of the Wausau Police Department, if any? What concerns do you have about the Wausau Police Department, if any? That's question 3. Please describe specific experiences or interactions, if any, have you personally had with Wausau law enforcement, positive, negative, or both? If there are anything you would like the Wausau Police Department to change in the way it conducts law enforcement, and if so, why are these changes important to you? And last question, question 6, is there any further information about policing you would like to share with or receive from the city of Wausau? Those questions can also be found in the chat. Again, if you don't feel, if you want, I'd love for us to have a discussion, but you can also write your comments into the chat. We will be saving the chat information as well. So we have your comments in there. So, all right. Now the time is yours. Who would like to start first? Not everybody jump at once. I'm going to start calling on you a little bit if no one goes.
I'll start. Hi, my name is Lee Shipway. I am the Executive Director at Peaceful Solutions Counseling and also a community member. I mainly just wanted to sit in today to see what the community is saying about the Wausau Police Force. I have somewhat a vested interest in that, full disclosure. I am the clinical supervisor for Kristen Seidler, who is the mental health therapist that is employed by the Wausau Police Department. And she's funded through the VOCA Act, Victims of Crime Act. And so she is able to provide therapy for any type of victim who's having acute stress reaction as a result of victimization or post-traumatic stress disorder. So I'm going to answer that first question, but you need to understand my view is probably a little bit biased because of what I do for a living. I see the worst of the worst. And so when I think of safety in the city of Wausau, the thing that comes to my mind the most is domestic violence. I've spent my career working in the field of domestic violence. It's much more common than anyone realizes in our city. There's a lot of times it's not reported. I've spent about 34 years working in that. And I have to say, I have seen good improvements in the Wausau Police Department in terms of their ability to be sensitive to victims and listen when a woman or a man calls to report that they've been victimized by an intimate partner. I've seen, and I've done some training with the police departments over the years to help them understand why the police reports are so important, especially for us treatment providers, because we can then break through some of the denial of the abusers when they say, oh, it was no big deal. And, she pushed me or she did that. And well, then I get the police report and I see that that's not really what happened. So I would say that I have been very encouraged by how much better the police reports have been in the last 10 to 15 years. I myself have not really had any interactions with the police department. I had one a long time ago when, gosh, probably 27 years ago when I accidentally hit a parked car in the very early morning hours. The sun was very low and I couldn't see through my windshield well enough and it was a little foggy. And so that's really the only time I personally have had some experience with the Wausau Police Department.
So it sounds like to me a lot of your interaction and experience with the Wausau Police Department is through your clients and getting records from the department about a certain situation you may have to address through court. Is it court required counseling that
It's
or
not, anyone can, it's called the SAFE program, Stopping Abuse for
ah,
Everyone. Voluntary participants are welcome, but 99% of the people in the program are court ordered either through probation and parole or through the district attorney's office on a deferred entry of judgment agreement.
mm, mm,
So the other part though is all my therapists on staff. I have 11 therapists on staff who work with a wide variety of issues. And so we see our fair share of women who've been victimized. And sometimes I have to admit, I don't hear wonderful stories from the victims that they say the police officer was rude to them or didn't seem to believe them or kept asking questions that led them to believe that the officer thought they were making the story up. So, and that's few and far between. I want to be fair about that, but I do sometimes hear that.
mm. So do you then as a counselor have other interactions as a result of that or no with the police office, Wausau PD?
No, the only other things that we have is if we have a suicidal patient in the clinic and we need to call the CART team, or just call 911 for the officer to come and determine if it's a 5115 and they need to take custody of that person and take them to the crisis unit. I've had very good interaction with the police officers with that. They have been absolutely patient and wonderful and understanding with that person. I had a patient once who was very intoxicated and we couldn't get him to leave the clinic. The officers managed to get him out of the room, into the hallway, outside. I mean, they took probably an hour, more than an hour, and were very good, very patient.
Awesome. Lots of great feedback. If as you think about not only your work or yourself as a citizen, where do you see room for improvement?
I think that some of the officers still could improve in terms of understanding victimization and understanding. Oftentimes I hear from law enforcement, they'll say, well, her story kept changing, so therefore she must be lying. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. When the brain's been traumatized, our memories don't come sequentially and chronologically. And so sometimes bits and pieces come back. And so the story is going to change, or more memories come later as the brain feels more safe and the psyche feels like I can now be safe in my own home. Then more memories come back. So then they'll report more. And then so sometimes law enforcement thinks that means they're lying or they're making it up. And that's not the case. It's just that's how memories are when you've been traumatized. Excuse me.
Thank you, Lee. Was there any other additional thoughts that you had?
Nope, that's all.
Any from our other two participants on here? Anyone want to go first? Ken or Ron?
This is Ken. Can you hear me?
Yes, Ken, I can hear you.
Great. It's the first time I used microphone on my computer for about 10 years. So
Yes, it works perfect. You got it.
awesome. I lost my Microsoft internet camera when I moved here 5 years ago. So I haven't got it back. The reason I wanted to comment is I really do want to think some of these things out and all those 6 questions and make some comments and submit it through email. But um, the one that's always on the top of my head is actually question number 1, and maybe how it interrelates with point number 5. Um, I think since I've been in Wausau, I listen to the radio, I witness things, and I see people call the police. They call, the non-emergency number, and police get dispatched to things that really shouldn't be under their purview, things like code violations. And we have code enforcement officer in Walsall, like every other town I've been in. But I always see, not always, but I'll see police standing in the front yard, and it looks like these 2 people are arguing over the height of their fence. And so I get worried about that when you pull in people who are armed with lethal weapons and have the ability under law to use lethal force. And we're talking to people about a dispute they might have over the height of their fence. I mean, that's just one example, but I think there has to be a 2-way street between the police and the public, and there's responsibility on both sides. And we've gotten into this situation in our society where like neighbors want to call the police about anything, and maybe the police should take the call, or they should, the emergency people take the call, but then that can wait for a half hour or a next day when a code enforcement officer can get there and not have police go respond to that sort of thing. Because once you put police into like a neighborhood, then you have the police, and you're always going to have feelings like what's going on. And there they are with the guns and the little lights on the car. And we're talking about a squirrel, that's running loose in someone's backyard, or, there's a duck that's in distress. And, we have DNR personnel. And I know these people like to work with each other, but I mean, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, but I think we'd be a lot safer if the police were focused on things that were violations of the law and under their purview, and not all these other statutes and things that really don't fall under like the criminal code. And it's not a threat to the public, such as, and that's the only thing I can really think of right now, like a code violation. Someone, you know, puts something too close to the property line, that sort of thing. So I think that's, in every place I've lived, I've actually run into that. And I know, the fire department have people that are, they're washing trucks, they're trying to keep busy, but they're in and around the fire department. So when the call comes in, they can go. But I'm sure if you look back in the record here, like anywhere else I lived, you could find where there is a like domestic violence call. And there's like maybe however people on a shift, and there's like 3 or 4 patrol cars out, and 2 of them are talking to neighbors over a dispute how high their fence is. And where are they to respond then? And I know they want to keep busy, but just patrolling and watching and listening and be able to respond is the most important thing. So I've gone on too much, but that's my big comment for today.
No,
And then
no.
I'll think things out and write in.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And if it's okay for me to kind of paraphrase what you said, let me know if I'm not paraphrasing in a way that's not accurate. But basically, it sounds like part of the solution you're suggesting is that for there to really be some guidance, rules around when police should respond and when issues should be held off and responded appropriately by different departments, it sounds like.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And I guess I'd follow up too, is I could see some of that happening because the police want to get out in the community and respond and be good, public servants. But, from the safety point of view, that's why I connected it with, 1 and number 5. It's like, those people really need to have their head on their shoulders and focus and respond when you need them for something important. Not that other things aren't important, but really focused and available for real dangerous or public safety things, and not sent off just because, hey, it might look good on the news crew video, on the local affiliate. Oh, look at they're over here and they're helping do this, or there's a branch across the road. The streets department can take care of that. So it may not seem as important thing to a lot of people, but I come from Philadelphia and a big city originally, and I've seen situations where people are off doing other things that really aren't that important, and they're really not there to respond when you need them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ken, for your insight. Is there more you like to add for any of those questions? So we have the 5 different questions, and love it. I know you said you're going to send in your feedback, but we have the opportune time, and I know the mayor's also here, and also William Harris from the Policing Task Force to just really even hear and take in some of this stuff. Are there anything else you'd like to answer from the 6 questions?
Yes. My perspective after what I said, that's why I really want to look at the questions more than write. But once again, if based off what you just asked, the only thing I'd like to add is I'd like to be a better citizen from my side when it comes to interacting with the police. I'm one of those people that loses their temper, and so if I get pulled over and I don't think I'm doing anything wrong, my first reaction is to get my the hair on my neck stands up, and through my life, I've run into police that have been incredibly, men and women, and incredibly polite, no matter what the situation. But you always they're human beings, and run into some that are terse and whatever. But I just found that, I just driving around and watching people react to police. There's people just sometimes they get really terse and tough. And the way I look is that if somebody's standing there with the weapons they have, I know it's wrong, but the last thing I want to do is put myself in the position where those people are gonna, if they're really not trained well, or they don't have a good disposition, where they're gonna lose their head too. That's why I think it's a two-way street, and it doesn't excuse police not responding appropriately according to the law and their training. But it's I've been here 5 years, and I've walked the streets, and I've heard. I've actually seen police taking a bunch of verbal, abuse, that I was really amazed that they just sat there very calmly. And I know we see on the news where that isn't always the case, but I think when we're looking at this, and I'm glad there was a task force, I think the police and the community, it's a two-way street, and they have to respect each other, and police aren't there to be, abused, but so are the citizens. There has to be a mutual respect, and I just think in our society, I just hope we calm down a little bit, and it goes both ways, because I can also see from the other side that people they're put into a bad situation, and well, I ask you guys, since I'm talking, have you seen that video of that woman that was walking the kids and pulled a knife on 2 police officers? I don't know where that was. It was on the news. You should go look for it. It was on the news recently. So I'll explain it real quick. So there was this woman, I don't know what age, but probably, she had 2 younger kids that looked on the video like they were 8, 10 years old. And she's walking down a residential street, wherever this was. And someone on the street noticed it, and she just seemed to be acting a little odd, they said. So they called the police. And then the woman kept walking down the street, and the police responded. They started coming. Well, this person came out of their house or wherever they saw them and started, I don't know if they're in a car or on foot, but they started following the woman and the 2 kids, the civilian who called it in. So later, after the fact, all this stuff happens, they said the woman did have mental illness, but she was a mom with her 2 kids, and 2 police officers showed up. And one was off to the side, like backup, and the other one was kind of in front of her, asking, "Ma'am, would you have a problem? Is there something you need we can help you with?" And the woman originally responds and says, "No, I'm just trying to get away." And the officer said something like, what are you trying to get away with? There's someone following me." So this person's responded to the citizen who called them in as being suspicious. And now she is mentally ill somewhat, they said. And she's all worried about the suspicious person following them. So here's a good Samaritan citizen who's causing an incident. And then there's two armed police officers there. Well, they kept trying to get her to calm down, and she pulled a knife out, and she's wielding the knife. And then the one officer was right in front of her, said, "Ma'am, that's fine. Please put the knife down and we can talk. We're not here to cause a problem with you." And then she suddenly went running as fast as she could towards the officer, who had their gun out, of course, by then, because the knife was out, and he shot and killed her in front of her two kids. So they're the sort of things, to me, is like, okay, police have to, we're paying you to risk your life, number one. And you have a woman, and I have seen women take down people men and women, who are much bigger than them. I'm not saying they can't do it, but you have two police officers there, and I'm thinking, don't they have those batons that you can pull out, the big metal things? And you have a woman with her two kids with a knife. Can't you pull out a baton and knock that knife out of her hand, whack her on the arm where she has to drop it? You pull a gun out and shoot her. So that was just in the news, like in the last 48 hours. And that's one I guess the mayor's list, and that goes to training. It's like, do you really have to use that type of lethal force when you have someone physically smaller than you at a distance? You have backup there, and they're wielding a knife, and you have other things on you. The other officer had their taser out, and they couldn't get it to work, the backup officer. So I guess they pulled the taser trigger and it didn't hit the woman, and then the other person shot her.
So can,
yeah,
as I'm hearing a couple different things. So I'm hearing, it sounds like from some of the stories that you're telling too, is like where your heart is in terms of different solutions and different things is better training, is what I'm hearing, for officers to use the least forced or least least harm method first, is one that I'm trying to listen here, and that's what I'm hearing. The other I was hearing was, how do you build relationship with citizen and officer? So Ken, do you have specific examples, given you've been in Wausau here for 5 years in your experience? Do you have a specific example of what that may look like for Wausau PD here? How do you bridge that relationship, citizen to trust the police to trust the citizen?
I really haven't had any incidents with the police where I've run into in a law enforcement situation. I just see the police out on patrol, or I see them outside their cars talking to somebody, and I don't think I've even seen them, maybe cuffing somebody or whatever. I haven't had a run-in, even been pulled over for, a traffic violation. So, as I've been just going about my business, not really. I think it's more, I think because we're doing this here and we have all these national events you see on the TV, I mean, that's really the only, other places I lived, I could comment, but it's really not relevant to Wausau.
Yeah.
But I knew now we have to, every police department has that choice. And that example I just saw on the news, I've always wondered that, because I have not done this. I have not been a commissioned police officer. I've not had a gun on my side and been, in any sort of situation where that was my responsibility. So I don't know how I'd react if somebody was going to come at me with a knife or a baseball bat or whatever, but it sure does. And those people, they need to protect their lives too. And you never know what someone's going to do. I mean, the person I mentioned, the woman I mentioned, I actually saw that in a national park I was visiting. This woman was really apparently drunk, and a male and female police officer, or ranger, whatever, was trying to approach him, and the woman just lunged and just decked the guy. I mean, she just put him down, just forearm across his face or something like that. And so, seeing that happen, it's like I can see the police. You don't know by looking at someone how dangerous they are, and if they're pushing it with you, and they're pushing you into a position where you got to defend yourself, or maybe other people there. I can see that. But that last thing I just saw, I'm thinking there's got to be better ways to disarm one woman in front of her two kids with a knife when you have two police officers there. She's outnumbered 2-1. They have all these different defensive, pieces of equipment on them, but they end up shooting her, and she died later in the hospital. So I think that type of, and I'm sure the police here, they have to go through that type of training, but that to me has to be the most valuable training with all we've gone through in the last year, especially that, the proper application of force, whether it's a gun or a taser, or it's physically, like the poor fella up in Minneapolis, sticking your knee on the person's throat, it's crazy. There's just excessive, and that's going to happen, but I can't see that being ever eradicated entirely, but more training, more practice and those type of situations, and how you resolve them without resorting to pulling a trigger of a gun is to me the number one thing that the police have to keep working at.
Thank you so much, Ken, for your valuable insight and feedback. Was there anything else before I move on to Ron here?
No, thanks a lot for listening and putting up with my Philly accent. Yo.
Thank you for sharing. It was very valuable information. So, hi, Ron. Are you off mute? Is your microphone working?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, my name is Ron Alexander, and I'm a retired addictions counselor. Last worked at North Central Healthcare, and the first thing I wanted to say is that I've known the chief, Chief Ben, for well over 20 years, and I have high regard for him and a lot of respect. I met Ben when we were both on the Marathon County Alcohol and Other Drug Partnership Council, and so I've had kind of a not a steady relationship, but an ongoing relationship with Ben throughout the years, and he's very professional, a people person, and I think he's sensitive and always tries to do the right thing. And so I guess my point is that from a leadership aspect, I think we couldn't do better than to have a leader like Ben. Just to switch over to the negative side, and I really can't give detail or can't talk much about it, but in all my interaction and communication with friends and people I know of color in the community, most all of them report some type of profiling experience throughout the years. But because, I'm not personally involved in that, I would just point that out as a comment, and I really can't relate to any details because it's not my story. The only story I can tell about that situation is several years ago. I'm also a member of a local interfaith social justice group called Naomi, and I got involved in a situation with our group and a local pastor maybe 5 years ago, where it was brought to my attention by the pastor that there was a profiling situation that she was aware of, and she wanted to support. And so I got involved in a press conference and brought attention to the matter. It turns out, as time went on, the next day, I made an appointment with our organizer and went to see it. At that time, the chief was a captain along with Matt Barnes, and I had a personal conference with them, and they did have the camera, much of the camera video of the incident that I was involved in. And, you know, like many stories, it turns out that there's more to it than I first thought. And I guess my experience from that was um, the opportunity, the offer by the department to review and look at the situation, and it certainly changed my opinion. I think it was an incident that there was things could have went either way, but there was certainly enough evidence that I saw to show that the person that was complaining had committed some illegal activities, primarily in giving a false name and some agitation in his behavior. So, that being said, in my experience as a addictions counselor, I spent a lot of time working in the community, kind of like we say on the streets. I had a program where I supervised clients in 3 apartment settings that were kind of high risk. And through the years, there was some involvement with law enforcement. And in my experience, it was always appropriate and professional. I got to put a big plug in for the CART team. I think that's probably one of the best things that's happened in our community to deal with people that have mental health, substance use disorders, and and tend to be in crisis modes on a regular basis, requiring police intervention. And the combination of an officer and a crisis worker being involved and getting to know these people and setting up plans to first being skilled at de-escalation and putting plans together that try to have a plan of action in place to remedy the situation, rather than taking a person to jail or to the healthcare center. I think that is really, really excellent. And I would put a plug in. I think that we ought to have enough teams to be able to cover all 3 shifts, 7 days a week. I think that is something that budget-wise should be looked at.
Awesome, Ron. Anything more in terms of your rich experience, not only in your work or other things that you have come into contact or had to partner with the Wausau PD that could improve, or were maybe there's processes there? Anything else?
Well, I just think, the latest thing that's come to my attention, I don't know what the latest status is, but the involvement with the homeless and homeless folks that have a addiction issue, a substance use disorder. I think that's just great, and that's another, I think, plus for the police tasking, the task force, and a lot of foresight in networking and individuals. I have known Officer Lemeron, Eric. One of my roles back in the 90s was to be the director of the Salvation Army Homeless Shelter, and Carol and Ron Lemeron were the officers in, and so I watched Eric kind of grow up as a teenager, and it's so neat to see him, his involvement now in this program, and the again the the coordination and the cooperation and the networking between the different uh, departments, I think is just really key. We tend to operate for a lot of years in silos, with everybody kind of having their own turf, and so many things. It was very difficult to combine resources and do things that were to the betterment of the community. But I think that's all changed now. There seems to be more of a willingness to network and to cooperate.
Can you tell me a little bit about the silo? What
Silo is that kind of like each department, the law enforcement, the healthcare center, the private providers, everybody kind of had their own turf, and there was kind of it was difficult maybe 15, 20, 25 years ago to get open cooperation. Everybody was trying to protect their own resources, you know what I mean, and not look at how they can give and take and cooperate to the betterment of the community.
Do you have a specific example of how that networking has improved from that silo to more of a networking, and how that's work?
I think the CART team is an excellent example. You combine the sheriff's department, the police department, and the healthcare center together. I think that's probably a pretty prime example. The homeless program that's being developed with law enforcement and the healthcare center is another example. I think if you look back at the past for 20 years, you can see a little more of a reluctance of those departments to openly cooperate on a joint venture.
So what I hear you saying is more cooperation, keeping that up. That's a positive.
Well, yeah, it is, and I think the Chief Blevin, being a people person and being open and a great listener, I think that that's an asset too. And I think that if there's a way that as far as recruitment and representation on law enforcement of the various diverse communities that we have in our community, to find ways, to have representation of members of those communities, I think that would be a good thing, to do. And I'm sure that that's a difficult thing to do, and I'm sure that's something that it's not a new thought, but I mean, I think that's something that should continue to be to be worked on. I didn't know I was going to get a chance to speak so much. I thought I'd be one of 100 on this call, and I could kind of hide, but you won't let me do that, will you?
No hiding. Well, really appreciate your thoughtful answers, Ron. Well, I see someone drop off. Oh, I thought I saw someone come in, and I see someone drop off. Did the person drop off? Oh, okay. So I think he just left. Oh, well, I thought we were gonna be able to include his or her, I'm not their thoughts. But looks like so I'm gonna open it up one more time because it looks like that person has left. So to just any lasting thoughts, not only those 6 questions, but as you think and dream, or even see you know, our community here getting better with our policing. Does anything else come to mind for the three of you, Ken, Lee, and Ron?
You know,
I could just say one more thing, you know, I think that we really have to take a look at, I'm not real sure that, that having, police representation, in the schools is all that positive a thing. And I'm
Mm,
just wondering, you know, if that doesn't need to be looked at and evaluated. You know, years ago, we looked at the DARE program, when, you know, from a couple points of view. And the DARE program was an extremely popular program that law enforcement really got behind and fostered. But if you looked at the data of the effectiveness of the program, it wasn't that good. There were other ways to do prevention and to reach the kids. So you know, I think that, you know, is there some data available to look at the presence of a police officer and the effect that it has on the behavior of the students? You know, I think we have to step back and kind of look at the data and and uh, and kind of rethink that.
So I want to jump in because I have some information about this as a mental health therapist. And I was also on the crisis process improvement team for our community, which Ron's kind of alluding to with all the different changes that have been made. I personally think that the police officers in the schools have made a tremendous positive impact in terms of mental health. We've had many reduced crises. We don't have teenagers being driven to the healthcare center crisis unit. They're able to diffuse it at school. We now have therapists that are placed in every school building in the county. And I think those two combined have made a big, huge difference. A lot of the kids that are seen at the clinic here have said how wonderful it is to be able to have that resource officer there, and the therapy dogs that are with them have made a huge, huge difference. I mean, you see kids who are extremely anxious, you get them in the room with that dog and they just immediately calm down. I mean, it is miraculous in a lot of ways. So not to contradict you, Ron, I'm just saying I've had a different experience.
Oh, that's good to know. You know, I think that's kind of thing I'm talking about is to look at some of that kind of data, you know, uh, that that is present.
yeah, make
Uh,
decisions off of certain data. So I love that, Ron. I don't want to cut anybody off, but I see a new participant and I don't want to conclude now. I want to get to that new participant and then we'll kind of come back. I know, Ken, you had some words too, so I want you to hold off if for a bit. But Ben, we have 6 questions that we're asking. It's in the chat. Wondering if you have any contributions in terms, would love to share your thoughts on any of those 6 questions that are in the chat, and I can briefly read them to you. Is when you think of safety in the city of Wausau, what are the most urgent priorities in your opinion and why? What are some current strengths of the Wausau PD? What concerns do you have about Wausau PD, if any? Please describe specific examples or interactions that you've personally had with the Wausau law enforcement, positive or negative. Is there anything you would like Wausau PD to change in any way it conducts law enforcement? And if so, why? And is there any further information about policing you would like to share with or receive from the city of Wausau? So I want to, if the rest of us can be a little patient, I want to give Ben a little some opportunity here to answer those questions, and I'll open it up again to everyone.
Hi. Yes, I just largely came to listen in. I work closely with the Wausau Police Department and the Marathon County Housing Task Force. And personally or professionally, I've had great experiences with them. I've largely been anti-police my entire life. And so I'm trying to change my view on that. And so I think these conversations help that. But professionally, and the work they've done with the United Way of Marathon County has been fantastic. Being able to lean on them to help rehouse individuals or connect them with sobriety options or rehabilitation options in Marathon County has been quite useful for us. and just the tone that I see coming out of our police department when compared nationally is much preferred in our small little community here. You know, I'm always impressed and happy when I see the police department, you know, promoting Domestic Violence Awareness Month and making sure that they're holding conversations with our community. I think that, you know, we've been in larger communities, spent substantial time in larger communities, and you don't always see that everywhere. And so I'll just keep it real short. I'm just here to listen in and gauge other people's thoughts. But, you know, on a professional level, I've been pleased with where I've seen Ben Bliven take the department, and how I've seen officers respond to situations, whether it's up close because I'm with them when we're responding to homeless individuals or individuals that are suffering mental health crises, or it's, you know, something that's relayed to me days later and just hearing the details secondhand. Like in the last few years, I haven't had a situation where I've had to question the police department, and that feels good.
Can you give some specific examples of that the positives here? Just any more specific examples that you were may be involved in that you're just really impressed by what they're doing?
Sure,
Or-
and I've worked largely with Officer Eric Lemarand and Ben Bliven, and that's directly addressing homeless individuals who, at the time of addressing them, they're either highly intoxicated or under the substance, under the influence of some sort of substance. And the specific examples would just be the patients that I've seen. You know, I've approached the gazebo with multiple officers in the past. I've gone under the bridge on Scott Street with multiple officers. I sat with, you know, Madame Mayor and Ben Bliven down under the bridge, and we had a conversation that was probably lengthier than it needed to be with a homeless individual. But then, you know, at the hands of the police department, that individual received a COVID test. That individual received a hotel room. That individual received food for the night, so that, you know, while they waited their COVID test to get into the shelter, they had food. And all the while, that all happened knowing that this individual had a terrible track record in the community, was banned from every hotel in the community, and that this would probably go south. And it would be on the backs of the police officer who brought her there. It would be on Ben Bliven. It would be on Matt Barnes, who made the connection because they knew the history of this individual. And none of that stopped them from, you know, doing in that instance what was right. You know, another situation is when we do the point in time count, often having a uniformed police officer is not the best thing for you when you're approaching a homeless individual. And so we requested that the police officer that was with us was in plain clothes, and that request was agreed upon. And then we also requested that should we come across somebody who is sleeping in a parking ramp, that they not be removed from that parking ramp, just because it was 0 degrees out that night. And, you know, so instead of arguing or being combative, the department was super open to those requests. And so there's a level of empathy, I think, that exists in our police department. And I, you know, whenever I look at a police department and I think of what I want personally out of that as a citizen, I want more empathy than authority. And so to be able to see that that empathy exists here, I think is just is good. And it's a good starting point for our community.
Love those examples, Ben. I wonder if I know I don't want to put you on the spot, but double tap on does any of that, so the anti policing, any kind of thoughts on where that is, and could that help us here in Wausau PD improve the personal experience of anti-policing and just anti-police, I'm sorry, not anti-policing, but anti.
Yeah. Well, and I don't mean it as in, you know, in all cops are bad or defund the police. I mean it as in, you know, I look at the world around me as the less authority that there is to impose, you know, what I perceive as unjust laws or unfair situations on people, especially people of color, and then I'm happy. And, you know, I've been in this community for 10 plus years. And whenever I say like anti-police, I'm never thinking of Wausau, because like I always look at Wausau and I think like, hey, we have police officers who take domestic violence seriously. We have police officers who are getting to know the people on their beat, who are getting to know the people of color in this town, who are engaging with people who are leading movements. We have police officers who came and facilitated a Black Lives Matter march for us. Like, that matters, and that's really important. But when you compare it to the national spectrum of police departments, for me, it's hard to look and say overall and broadly that police departments are acting in good faith. I think that here in Wausau, they are. And I think that has 100% to do with leadership. I'm a big fan of Ben Bliven, and I'm a big fan of his leadership style, and I'm the big fan of being able to connect directly with him if I need to. But I don't think you can do that in every other community. And so I don't necessarily mean that specifically to Wausau. I mean it more as a broad term when I look nationally at some of the corruption coming out of police departments. And thankfully, nothing has happened in our community that would make me think that I need to take that view here.
Okay.
I look at our police department more as community partners that are looking to advance the well-being of our community than I would say in Seattle or Chicago, where we've spent considerable amounts of time and have had interactions with police, even casually in those cities, where it just didn't leave me feeling great.
Well, good. I wasn't sure if the anti-police was related to any incidences or anything that we could personally shed some, light to and find solutions for. That's what we're here for, right? Is to discuss the good and the challenges and opportunities that we have for the Wausau Police Department. So thank you for a lot of your great examples. And if you have more to add, whether it's, some opportunities that the Wausau PD can do better in terms of policing, please feel free to chime in. I want to open it up now to the rest of the group for any lasting thoughts.
The only thing I want to add that I thought about when someone else said something else, I have heard from some of the men in our domestic abusers program who are African American or Hispanic that they have been pulled over numerous times, and they say that they're not doing anything wrong and that the police have pulled them over.
Thank you, Lee. And I see Ken, you're on off mute. I want to give you that opportunity. Skipped you to the other time. So Ken, are you off mute? Can you share?
Yeah, I'm off mute. Yeah, I'm just listening, and a lot of the comments are great. It made me think about, I lived in a very small town of 5,000 people in Wisconsin. And just playing off the comment about the police officer assigned to schools, when I was there, I was pretty certain that police officer was there, and a high school had like 1,200 kids. They were there because it provided an extra job for someone local in a police department. I moved in from big cities. I lived in Omaha, Nebraska, and north of Omaha. It's it's a big city for the Midwest, but it's a lot different when you get these big police departments or these big cities and stuff. I come to Wausau, it's the biggest town in the, center of the state. It's kind of small geographically. It's downtown and its actual borders. And after a few years, when I got to see like West High and then East High, besides thinking, oh my gosh, my high school was a pit compared to these palaces. I wondered, why there would be police officers there, but that really depends on the community. If they're having a lot of problems with things that are crimes, illegal, physical assault, threats, drugs. And if it's happening, I'm all for police being there because I always go back to public safety again. It's all great that everyone's in the community doing all these things and the police should do that. But when the domestic violence occurs, when the armed robbery occurs, the police need to be out there and able to respond. So if a police officer in a school allows someone to be on site and ready to respond and allows other officers to be patrolling and responsive to the rest of the city, I think that's great. But it'd be nice if somebody really looked into what the statistics are, whether or not they're really needed, because the resources need to be, in where there are threats that the police need to respond to. Um, I just also with the profiling and such, I've been all over the country, and it's always going to be an issue until the end of time, I think, with people doing that. And that's another thing with training, use of lethal force, is trying to get people to just try not to, I don't know if the profile's right, but if any of you have been anywhere, if you, I always tell people I'm a white guy from Philly. If I go visit some friend of mine, African American friends in West Philadelphia, I'll tell you, I get off out of the subway, and people are going to be looking at me because I'm someone that's not usual there. And I know the police like to say that, well, they look suspicious, but I always wonder too, um, how much of that is suspicion or just maybe is racism thrown in there. But when you stand out in the crowd, you don't seem usual. People are gonna look at you, and so I could see that happening here, even in this town. There's enough diversity, but not big populations where you could have profiling going. So that's what you guys are meeting for. I think that's great to look into that. I'm going to say one other aside. I don't know with the mayor, and I know your study is the police department. And another reason I looked at the literature is I was wondering, why this wasn't connected with the sheriff's department, why we're not looking at the police and the sheriffs and their deputies at the same time. But I want to tell you all, since you're here, especially the mayor's listening, I've lived in Philadelphia, New York. I've been all over the country. I lived in Omaha, Nebraska. I have never, ever, ever seen people speed like they do around here. And the sheriff's deputies and the police, they give them, I talk to these guys, oh, I'll give you 11 miles an hour over the speed limit. Well, when you're out on the interstate and you're 65 and now you're doing 76 before someone's really going to pull you over, unless you're weaving or something. That's crazy. And I live on Town Line Road between X and J. And I asked the sheriff to put up a speed recorder, and they did about a year ago. And they had 17 people that were doing over 90 miles an hour. So going back to public safety, we've had people killed recently in the last few years on Town Line Road. We have pileups and snowy days out on 50, on 29 or whatever. I know that sounds stupid. It's a traffic thing, but it costs lives. And I think my perception is when you're in a local community and you have mostly local hires in law enforcement, you got to be really ethical. Everyone you pull over is related to someone you went to high school with. It's Aunt Judy's nephew or godson. And I know that people get off because of who they know with a warning. And I know if the police actually enforce the speed limit on my road, they'd be arresting almost everyone they went to high school with and probably taking their licenses away. That's my hot spot around here. I've been rear-ended while I was forced to hit deer when I lived along the Mississippi River on the Great Mississippi Highway because people were tailgating me when I was doing 10 miles over the speed limit anyway. So the road accesses coming in and out of Wausau, people are trying to get here, whether it's from the great rural community we're in, and they all come into Wausau. They're coming up from Stevens Point to work. And whatever it is, I can't believe if I put my cruise control 5 miles over the speed limit that I have people tailgate me all the time. It's a horrendously dangerous situation. So there you go, Ms. Mayor. That's something I'd love to be passed on to our police and the sheriff's department. That I think they have to be a little more serious. Not to get people tickets. I don't want, like the other fellow said, I don't want people like being in this police state where everyone's always pulled over. I think some warnings are due though, and some more presence on the highways and people take it seriously. Because my wife is scared to pull out of our driveway. And like I said, we're X and J. It's a stretch of what, like 4 miles or so. And I can see a quarter mile in the direction of travel I'm turning out to when I drive into Wausau. And before I accelerate up to 55 miles an hour, there's someone on my tail. And that's when I called the sheriff. And I figured by measuring it that they had to be doing 90 miles an hour to do it. And it turned out that was right. That's crazy.
Well, I will definitely share that information. It sounds like it would be the jurisdiction of the sheriff. And so you asked why we're only doing the police.
Yeah.
I only have Wausau City Council, Wausau Mayor, we only
Oh,
have
yeah,
jurisdiction
sure.
over the Wausau Police. Now, the chair of our task force is a member of the Marathon County Board.
Cool.
And, we have been talking a little bit because we're hearing from people from all over the place. The justice system in its entirety is not just the Wausau Police. So we're
Yeah.
talking about, well, what does this look like for other parts of the justice system? And that would include the sheriff's department, the DA, or what does this look like? So we're kind of chatting. And obviously the county has to drive on that, but he's the right person. John Robinson is the person I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I will share your information for sure. For your comments with them to make sure that you're able to kind of keep an eye on that, because 90 miles an hour on a county highway is a little bit much, I would say.
Yeah, those guys, they responded. All of a sudden, you had the state patrol on the road every once in a while. You had DC Everest there. We had the sheriff there. Of course, not Wausau because I'm outside the city limits. But these folks are speeding all the way into town too. Down Grand Avenue, down town line to Grand Avenue. I know your police are on those parking lots down that hill. I think it's great because people need to slow down. So anyway, thanks. I know it's not your jurisdiction, but it's good to relate to these other people and act together, because it sure is silly when you're on Camp Phillips Road going to Weston and you're on a 4-lane highway that says 35 miles an hour, and you see like a cruiser there from DC Everest. They pull someone over for going 5 miles over. It's a speed trap, and you have your people out there dealing with serious stuff, So, and I don't see enough people where it's really needed on a high speed road like county end. So yeah, coordinated efforts would be great, because it really does make me feel more unsafe driving in my car than any place else I've lived. Maybe I'm just paranoid, but big issue with me.
Thank you for the feedback.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Ken. So, all right, I want to, again, just look around the room. Any other lasting comments? Otherwise, I'm going to have William Harris close us out. So any lasting thoughts on the 6 questions that are in the chat? Chime in. Otherwise, I do want to thank all of you and for coming tonight. I feel like we have lots of great stuff. I'm sure that Ruth is probably tirelessly with her arm writing and taking notes. So poor Ruth, but thank you for that. And thank you so much to our whips behind the scenes tech. We would not be able to do this without their support. I really just appreciate everyone that was able to make it tonight. And I'm going to, looking around again, no unmutes and no nothing. I'm going to turn it over to William Harris to close us out. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for participating. Again, my name is William Harris. I am a member of the Wausau Policing Task Force. And on behalf of the task force, I want to thank everyone for their interest and participation in today's listening session. The task force really appreciates your comments, and we will be considering them as we work to develop recommendations for the public, the police department, and city council on how best to protect human health, safety, and general welfare of Wausau residents and visitors who come in contact with the law enforcement system. This is the start of public engagement process. And so there will be many other additional opportunities for you and others to weigh in the future, including public meetings on our recommendations. So we would ask that you please encourage others to weigh in as well at other listening sessions. You can leave a voicemail, you can do an online survey, or submit comments via email or in writing. You can also find more information by going to the website www.whips.org/WPD, which is also posted in the chat session for Zoom. And again, I want to just extend our thank you and appreciation to you for attending today, and have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Bye, thanks.